Nice of you to do so, yeah. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 5th and final day celebrating all of you out there for Global Entrepreneurship Week. On behalf of the Northwest Pennsylvania Innovation Beehive Network and the Gannon SBDC, I would like to welcome you to our final podcast regarding specialty success stories. We are so tickled pink to have 3 people who are on our panel today. We have on Antonio Howard, muralist extraordinaire. We have Davina Paisley from Divinely Crowned, and joining us, hopefully, I know he is in between things, is Bryan Dunn from Culture Square. Our moderator for today is our one and only Byron Rich from Allegheny College, an assistant professor and heading up our brand new Beehive node. So welcome, Byron. We have 2 housekeeping items I'd like to review with you. We are recording our podcast in order for those who weren't able to attend to watch this, and we will be having that up on our Northwest Pennsylvania Beehive YouTube channel, as well as some other venues, so please feel free to download it. Also, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A area of the webinar, as Byron will be looking at and will be more than welcome to ask your question throughout. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Byron. Byron, take it away, please.
Thanks, Kathy, and thanks for all the hard work you've done this week, getting everything prepared and operating so smoothly. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
I'll make one small correction just because, you know, I may as well. Associate professor, I may as well throw that in there just because I got tenure. So I've got to be a little proud of myself. After reading about Davina's work, it seems as though a little self-appreciation and self-love goes a long way. So I'm going to own it.
Does.
Well, thank you. Antonio, interestingly enough, I'm an art professor, so I'm sure we're going to have lots of wonderful things to talk about. So I'm really delighted to have you both here. I'm looking forward to Bryan popping in. If it looks like I'm looking around a little bit, I've got another monitor over here where I'm looking for questions. So don't be too alarmed if it looks as though my gaze is casted in a different direction. Well, this is fantastic. So I was hoping that we could just like dive right in. You could talk about maybe a little bit about like the genesis of the work that you're both doing. I'm happy for each of you to whoever wants to go first to go for it. I wrote a little bit about both of your stories and it's pretty inspiring. It'd be great to hear in your own words, what it is that kind of like spawned the work that you're doing.
Inspire us.
So my name is Davina Paisley. I am the founder and CEO of a brand called Divinely Crowned. Divinely Crowned is a brand that encourages women to have self-love and confidence through faith, lifestyle, and fashion. We offer confidence life coaching. So I'm a confidence, lifestyle, and style coach. My goal is to help my clients to just embrace their confidence, embrace their self-love, find their own personal and unique voices, and just help them embrace the queens within themselves. I offer brand merch. We have a website, which is our hub for just like all things self-love and self-care. I am an inspirational speaker as well. I offer guest hosting, and I recently just launched my own podcast called Divinely Crowned Conversations. And that podcast is just about having real, honest, open, and transparent conversations about the everyday journey of women, from where they come from, where they're at now, and where they see themselves going in the future. And then I also just added event planning to my own personal brand. So I just had my very first sold out event in October called a Sip and Slay Soiree. And my goal is just to create new events for our city, our community, to just connect people in positive atmospheres and have a good time, network, and you know, just to get to appreciate our city a little bit more. So that is me.
It's fantastic. I'll let Antonio go first, and then I'll ask some like follow-up questions just related to what you're talking about. So
Okay.
yeah, Antonio,
That
go
just
for
proved for me that I got a lot of work to do.
it.
My name is Antonio Howard. I am Peggy Howard Harrington's son. I refer to myself as Peggy's son as acknowledgement to my mother, and with the hopes that my demonstration as a man will mitigate the embarrassment I caused there during my childhood. I am the owner of Murals by Antonio Howard. I create process-driven community murals and work to turn blank walls into opportunities for learning, relationship building, and beautification.
Fantastic. So Davina, I'll start with you a little bit here. I'm interested to hear, like, what was it that you were seeing that inspired you especially to like really focus on women's empowerment from the lens that you're approaching it? Like, what was it that you were seeing, like living in Erie, that kind of made this something that you just like had to pursue?
So actually, it was what I was seeing within myself. So growing up, I had very low self-esteem. I was always a very outgoing young person, but I just always never felt secure in who I was, you know, what I brought to the world, things like that. I always felt like misunderstood and like an outcast. So it literally wasn't until I had my daughter, who is now 10, that I realized, like, okay, you have this young little girl that's gonna look up to you. You're gonna be the first role model she has. And it's time to start like loving yourself and learning what self-love means for you and confidence. So she really inspired me with my brand, but I've always wanted to be a light to people. And so I kind of found that avenue of building my self-confidence, learning what that looks like for me, and realizing the need for other people. I'd have women tell me all the time on my journey of finding my self-love is, oh, I want to be like you, and I wish I was like you. And I'm like, listen, you can be like me in your own way. So just growing in myself, being this new mom and wanting to be the best role model, and also seeing there's the need for encouraging women to just embrace who they are. And even on this journey, I'm realizing I'm inspiring all people to just embrace who they are and have confidence and self-love in who they are. Oh, well, can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Sorry about that. There we go.
Okay.
Accidentally tripped my
Hi,
button here.
Bryan.
Hey, Brian, nice to see you. I'll jump in there with some questions for you in a sec. I want to just follow up here on that on Davina's last comment. Are a lot of the women that you're working with, are they entrepreneurs, or is it kind of just like a mix of women that are just kind of looking for inspiration themselves?
It's a mix of women. So I will rewind real quick. Divinely Crowned started as just being like an Instagram, like I was learning how to dress myself and be more confident in like even just what I wore. And I realized like I was geared towards a certain demographic of women. And I like realized that I was getting women from all different backgrounds, ages, and things like that that were like inspired by me. So no, it's just all women who need my encouragement and my inspiration.
And one man right here.
And one man.
And
I always say it. I say divinely crowned. I say kings wear crowns too. So you guys, I think about you too.
Well, I know my daughter's constantly putting tiaras on me. I don't know if I'm ready for a crown.
Yes.
But, you know, the tiara is a good enough look. I'll take it. So Antonio, that kind of like, there's an interesting intersection there because you're talking about being Peggy's son. So Peggy must be a heck of an individual though, too, given, you know, you self-proclaim to have put her through a lot. So is that like a strength that you draw on a lot, or tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, Peggy is definitely forced to be reckoned with, and having to raise me was, I think, the prime example of that. For much of my life, as a 15-year-old kid, I brought injury to the Erie community, and most of my wrongs committed against the community were attributed to my mother, right? And she didn't raise me right. She was responsible for my decision-making, and I didn't understand exactly the effect that I was having on my mother until I spent the past 26 and a half years of my life from the age of 15, sentenced to life in prison. And I got a chance to reflect, study the history of women's struggle, particularly Black women's struggle in this country, and understood the effects that I had on my mother. And whatever I do now and positive in the Erie community, I want people to attribute that to her in the same way they attributed the negativity to her, right? So I always lead with I am Peggy's son. So when I do good in this community, when you see my mother, say, I know your boy.
Love that.
And that's my
Yeah,
way
I'll-
to give back to her.
Where's the tissue?
No, I'm with you. Yeah. That's really fascinating and very inspiring. It's really interesting that it's such a refreshing take, like feminist take, honestly, you know, on just like looking at the power within our moms. I feel similarly. I definitely put mine through some things, and reflecting back on that, like the strengths that she gave instilled in me. I feel inspired hearing you say that. That's really fantastic.
Right.
So
Right.
I should give Bryan a chance to jump in here. And Bryan, we were just speaking to Davina and Antonio and just giving them a moment to kind of talk about what it is that they do and what inspired them to do the things that they do. Antonio is a muralist, and Davina is an entrepreneur running Divinely Crowned. So I'd like to just hear about like the genesis there of Culture Square. Oh, you've got,
He's having some severe
Oh, he's
network disruptions.
okay, well, we can give him a minute to see if he if those get sorted out, and in the meantime we can go back to our other two guests and see whether or not that's going to resolve itself. I wonder, Bryan, if it might help if you ditched the video feed and we went to just audio. You could give that a shot in a minute here.
Sometimes that does work.
Sometimes that does, but
Yes.
so until Bryan's stuff is sorted, I want to hear more about both of everybody's relationships to Erie. I'm fascinated. I'm not from this region at all. It's been an interesting journey for me to find love for it. It definitely has took a moment. I've lived in the area for 9 years, and now I can confidently say I do love Northwest PA. But I grew up out in Western Canada, and so moving out here was just
Wow.
totally eye-opening to me in a lot of ways. And now I see the beauty in it. I really get it, and I want to hear what it is about this region. Like, why is it that you both have chosen to not just stay here, but like choose to like dig in and thrive here and be a part in like Erie's next chapter? Because it feels like we're on the precipice of something in Northwest PA, and it's folks like you that are kind of like driving that. What is it about here that's like made you commit in such a way?
Do you want to go? Yeah.
For me, it's the damage I did historically, right? Like, so, you know, I'm a convicted felon, and the things I did to acquire that title are embarrassing, not only to my mother, but to me. And I think that prior to me moving on in my life anywhere else, I owe it to the people I injured in the community I injured to come back and try and restore some of the life that I took away, literally and figuratively.
So what is it about, Antonio, just what is it about like your particular medium as like a muralist that you think has such like cultural resonance? Like why is it able to help move communities forward?
I think it's because it's a non-competitive connection point, right? Like many of us can say like growing up, we were involved in sports, you know, we can align ourselves with various competitive tasks and that we root our identity in, right? But not many of us are painters, right? There's an uncomfortability and a vulnerability that you have to bring to a community mural, right? And that uncomfortability requires you to drop your guard, right? You have to shed your caste and your cool. So you are literally equal with anybody and everybody who holds a paintbrush standing next to you, right? And while painting, I've discovered that people just automatically connect with no effort at all, right? You just start painting, you start talking, communicating with each other, and before you know it, there's a relationship and the creation of a memory that will transcend that very moment, right? So I always say that the mural is just the evidence of the experience that happened during the creation of it, right? And so now, once a mural is created, people who now walk down the street who would otherwise frown upon each other or grit on each other for breaking the 3-second rule, the unofficial 3-second rule. You stared at me for too long, right? They now can smile and say, hey, aren't you the guy, aren't you the woman that I painted with? Yeah. I painted that spot. It's still up there. They have a connection point and it's non-competitive. So I think that's the beauty of art, right? It allows you to explore a part of yourself that you would not otherwise explore, right? And that the regular social circuit that you're around wouldn't allow you to explore, right? Just be yourself, let your guard down and paint.
Sure. Yeah. Mural, it feels like almost like the most democratized art form in a lot of ways, just because it's not relegated to like the white cube of a gallery. It's not like in these really esoteric spaces that can, quite frankly, be super alienating. And I think that's like, there's such an immense power. And similarly, something that we talk to our students about a lot is like leaving space for them, leaving space for the viewer, for the intellectual labor of the viewer to bring their own stories, to bring their own like experiences to the pieces. And I think like with murals, when you're walking down the street, you know, if you've lived in a community for long enough and you suddenly see a mural in a space that you've occupied for years, it changes like your belief in its worth. Like you bring your own like history and context to it. I think that's an incredibly powerful way of looking at it that you're like bringing to it. I appreciate that a lot. Davina, back to the question that I asked there a few minutes ago. So what it is about the Northwest PA, especially like the Erie community, that has kind of like just held you? You know, like with your skill set, it feels like you could go do something.
I'm born and raised here. I've been here 32 years. And I'll be honest, within the last few years, most of my life, I'm always like, me and my siblings are always, I'm the second oldest of 4 kids. We're always like, we're moving out of Erie when we get older, when we graduate, and we're all 4 still here because, family support system. But in these last few years, I have 2 children. I'm like, we're moving, planning to move out of town. And as I'm growing this brand, I realized that there's a need for what I do here. There is, they call this dreary Erie and one of the most unhappy places to be. And I'm like, well, what can I do to kind of help be a light and to, encourage people to be happy here? So I'm still here. My sister, Davina, Pacley, she has, they have their Erie's Black Wall Street. That's kind of also connected me here because they've opened my eyes to like the beauty of Erie. In unique ways. And so now I'm like, okay, we complain about, oh, we go out of town and there's this to do and there's that to do and there's these type of conferences. And I've been one of those people to say that, but I'm like, but all it takes is somebody to create these types of things here. So why not do it, Davina? And I guess that's kind of one of the biggest things that's kept me here is like, I can create these spaces here for us or be a part of creating them here because it is a beautiful city when you really pull back the layers of what you're kind of used to seeing.
Sure. Yeah. And that's been my experience. I think it's really fascinating. Like, I love the phrase that there's opportunity in adversity. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, having grown up in Western Canada, where there's like less of that, there isn't as much texture to a city in the way that Erie has, like history, good and bad. And like within that kind of like adversity, it seems like there's just so much opportunity to create something incredible that like reflects on the troubling histories as well as like the good points and like make really meaningful contributions. And it's really fun to talk to folks like you that are like living that. It's very inspiring to a person relatively new to the region who's getting a new lens on it. So hey Bryan, how are you doing there with your connection?
I hope, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
we can. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, trying my best. I'm sorry. I'm into transportation, so you can see I'm in back of my truck.
Yeah.
So I do. So I was hoping to get home, but I was like, okay, since it is on Zoom, let me just back on the rest area. And join, and the network to the to the race area was not good. So 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 if you guys can hear me, yes.
You're
You were
good, Bryan.
asking, yes, you were asking about Culture Square, right?
Yeah, we'd love to just get like a sense of the start. Tell us about like what inspired you to pursue this. What led you to the point that you're at?
All right. To start, first of all, is that I'm a migrant from the Congo. So I started traveling when I was just like 17 years old. So a little nutshell of what happened is that I went down South Africa, and it is where I met my wife, and she was from Nigeria. So and we got married in South Africa. And just to fast forward a little bit, so we were able to travel together to India and finally decided to settle here in America. So that was back in 2010. And then a few years later, I was given a scholarship to go to Finland. So you can almost picture that I was exposed to so much cultural differences, and due to my traveling and the fact that I was also married to a wife that was not part of the culture I grew up. So the wow moment was when I went to Finland, and there were students from all over, and we were put into kind of a community, and we were able to kind of just collaborate on so many different subjects that we had. And that was kind of the moment I was like, wow, this was so beautiful. But I came home. When I came home to Erie to actually assist to the birth of my first son, something happened. I was like, oh, I miss that Finnish meeting and stuff like that. So I was like, I wish I could have somebody nearby so that I can try to reminisce that. So that was when I was like, what if there is a Finnish person next to a Finnish person who is my next door neighbor? How am I gonna know about it? So that was kind of the moment I was like, no, let me create a platform where I can have that easiness of finding somebody of any nationality or any community whenever I need to.
So can you tell us a little bit about how it actually works? I've been clicking around on your website, and I'm just like really interested in just like the platform itself. Like what was how do you expect and anticipate that people are like navigating this? And
that's a good question. When we were thinking about launching the business, we were like, okay, culture is such a very wide concept, but we wanted to capture that in those 4 verticals. So which is event, language, recipe, and e-commerce. So those are the 4 verticals that we are operating in. So if I can go quickly through them, the recipes is more of like anyone can post a recipe on that website and just showcase that recipe, the way it cooked, kind of prepared in the culture. And also at the same time, they can make themselves available to get hired. If there is maybe a party somewhere, you know, you have, you kind of get bored to eat the same food. So you can invite these chefs or cooks over to kind of bring up a little bit of spice. To spice up a little bit of your party with their recipes and stuff. So the second verticals, which is the language, was actually created with the need that we have in mind was to help people communicate in different languages, especially for interpreters. So it's very easy to actually connect to any interpreter in the world through that vertical. And also people can be able to their languages to other people through that vertical. So that was what we're doing. When it comes to event, that is where we think it kind of our stellar, I would say, vertical, because it was designed with the main purpose of trying to bring different theme around parties. So you're celebrating your birthday, you've been doing that, let me say, for 20 years the same way. So you can go through there and pick up a theme and say, hey, you know what, I want to be Irish for this party, or I want to be, Colombian for this party, or Brazilian for the next. So you pick up the theme and you customize it, and we can actually bring that party pretty much close to Brazil or to Colombia, the way you want it to be. So, but the e-commerce actually is where we funnel everything, whereby you kind of like, okay, I'm an American, but I don't have a Brazilian suit. So that's where you go and buy those items. Yes.
Thanks. That's really helpful. It's really interesting. I very much appreciate that you use these like three verticals to kind of like bake in a much more profound appreciation of cultures and like the nuances within cultures, rather than kind of just like a surface level engagement that I think, can happen so easily when it's just maybe one of those like facets, when you're just buying a singular product, or when you're just like going out to eat at an Ethiopian restaurant, for instance, or something. So that like multi-pronged approach is really fascinating. It's also funny that you just can't like leave the snow alone. You must just love it. Hey, going from Finland to Erie. It's something about it that you just can't get enough of.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's not particular about Finland. It's about every place I've been, you know what I'm saying? But Finland, it's where, it was like a square where so many people from all over the world were. So we kind of met there for education purposes. And I was like, wow, I could see the world on one place.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's a different take too. I've spent a lot of time in Finland, and then growing up in Canada, where like multiculturalism versus like the much more like American kind of take on melting pot, where we're all supposed to be, like one unified kind of thing. It really feels as though you seem very inspired by that idea of multiculturalism, like a real embrace of the customs, the foods, whatever, of other places, rather than trying to create like a homogeneity that sort of, I don't know, gets rid of that like fun difference that makes it interesting to be in a place. Does that seem like a fair characteristic? Yeah.
Correct. There is a major need that I saw that I would like to kind of dissect here, is the fact that when people are going out as tourists, they pretty much navigate what I call the classic way of tourism. Like you go through the big places and stuff like that. It's pretty much like walking into someone's house and just serving yourself coffee without actually talking to the owner. You know what I'm saying? So with Culture Square, we wanted people to actually be able to communicate, not going straight to just these places, but to actually connect with the locals, with that specific community, and see what that community can really actually serve them. Because there's no one who knows better their community than the people living there. So that's why I felt like Culture Square would be such a very pivotal platform. If you want to communicate, connect with a specific community, that's the place to go.
Sure. Yeah. And there's no more powerful tool for like dismantling any type of bias than just like exposure to other things. Pulling back that like fear, I guess, is like so important. And I guess that's something that I definitely miss about some places in the world where that like multiculturalism is really embraced. Is it's fun,
Right.
Walking street to street where you just like encounter different cultures and the mashups between them on those like fun edges where communities are like bunched together. And I think that's really exciting to see that you're doing that. Davina, I wanted to jump back to you for a second and talk about, well, all three of you kind of have a foot in this world, but broadly speaking, style. So Davina, maybe we could start with you and just talking about like fashion a little bit and how your seemingly like love of fashion has sort of kind of like been the starting off point and kind of has manifested in this entire brand. It feels like, just looking at your branding and everything, it feels like you really embody it. It's not faked whatsoever. I'd just love to hear more about your take.
Well, thank you, first of all. So, fashion, I always say fashion is my therapy. And self-love, growing in self-love, you know, it's my weight played a part in my insecurities. And I used to always like be envious of these girls that could wear whatever they want. And I grew up in a fashion loving family. My mom is very into fashion, very into shopping. She can get you like 3 bags full of clothes for like $50 and like things like that. So this love of fashion has always been a thing, but I wasn't until I'm growing in this journey of self-love that I kind of embrace my own style. And that's another thing I realized with women is, you know, they I wish I could wear what you wear and things like that. So in my journey of just embracing my own style and wearing what I want to wear and not worrying about what other people say, you know, that definitely was added to my brand, and seeing the need of women wanting to know how to dress for their confidence, how to dress for their body type. I'm like, I'm gonna keep this going because I love this for me. Like I said, it's my therapy. This is what makes me feel good, makes me happy. And so I'm gonna add this because there's women out there that you know, their confidence may come from what they wear and how they wear it.
It's really interesting. I think I've done a lot of reading recently about like the importance of being able to embrace like individuality, especially in like historically underrepresented communities, where like, again, getting back to what we were just talking about with Bryan, where there's this like sort of underlying cultural, I don't know, expectation for the last God knows how many hundreds of years to kind of like blend in and homogenize and be one thing, and there being like one right take. So is it inspiring, like just you seeing this cultural moment where people are really like embracing, I don't know, embracing themselves, but embracing like style in such a, I don't know, kind of a profound way?
Yeah, very profound way. And even like, you know, culturally, like even professional settings, you used to like have to dress this way in order to like be respected or looked at as professional. And now seeing that kind of that cycle being broken. And I'm gonna give credit to the millennials because they're like, listen, we're gonna wear what we want and we're still gonna be able to be successful, do great things in this world, be professional. But we can embrace our own styles. And even like trickling down to my children, that's like one of my biggest arguments with my children is fashion, because I'm like, mom bought this for you, but you're trying to do your own thing. But it's like, let's find the balance of you being your unique self and also respecting mommy's money. But it's like just watching how they're able to create. I say fashion is a form of art. So going into even murals and things, it's like, you are the canvas and you're creating these art pieces within yourself. And I always say confidence is my favorite accessory. And I believe that the more confident people are in themselves, the more their style and their fashion sense comes out for them.
Sure. Yeah. And I think you're probably right on the millennial thing. It's really fun to see like Gen Z kids taking it to 11.
Yeah.
I like am blown away when I walk around my campus, like seeing what students are wearing. Also, it does take me back to the 90s. Their like obsession with grunge right now is sort of making me happy.
Everything
maybe
is
just
recycled.
yeah, I know it's and the long single earring. I'm just like I wish I'd had the confidence to wear that. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So Antonio, I would want to sort of ask you a similar question here, just talking about style. Like you've got a very unique style as a muralist, and just the way that you like conceive of the works that you put up, both in like composition, color story, and everything that you're working with. Like where did that come from? Like what was your what was your background in art that kind of like led to the style that you've got? Because it is something, style is a difficult thing to generate, you know, and I'm just curious about like where yours started, how that got going.
Pain, I think. So art started off for me it was like a therapy, right? So most of what I started exploring about myself dealt with really muted colors and started to develop into just earth tones and take on a different, more organic style. So it derived from my pain, but I find that my style is evolving as I go, and as I learn more and I interact with other artists, right? So Patrick Fisher was a huge influence in the development of my developing art style, right? Like I aspire to be an activist artist, but I haven't yet developed the courage to do that yet, right? So I'm kind of at that tipping point where I have to choose between the way that I used to paint and incorporate the message that I want to include in my paintings. So I'm really at a turning point right now with my style. So most artists have like a through line in their art, right? Like even in style, like you know who the person is 2 blocks away by virtue of their style, right? Like Dapper Dunn, all the cats like that. I don't feel like I have that through line in my art, right? And Patrick will also often remind me, like, where's your through line? Like, I can paint, and I believe I can paint anything, but that through line is missing, and I haven't yet captured what exactly I want it to be, right? There's so many different elements, so I'm still evolving as an artist. I appreciate the compliment that I have a style, but I really feel like I'm in a vulnerable space right now as an artist, especially as a community artist, because the community art is more about the community style and not just mine, right? And I have to figure out the delicate balance in that, right? I want to do something that's bright, clever, pithy, whatever, but the community wants to do something that has a message that resonates with the rest of the world, the community and experience that they're going through, right? So I think that's been a very educational relationship.
Well, I guess I tend to think like how you are that activist artist. I think anytime an artist is doing like an intervention in public space like that, can't be anything but an activist in a way. Like you are literally like, you know, disrupting people's everyday takes on spaces. And I think that's like an incredibly powerful thing to do when you're, especially with the structures that you work with. You know, a lot of times just like scrolling through your stuff, I'm looking especially at like Purple Martins here. You know, with the 6 birds across what would be a relatively nondescript garage. Like that feels like a pretty activist piece to like watch, you know, these birds representing, I don't know what, but to me, it feels very hopeful, you know, on what would otherwise be a pretty mundane sort of like space. I think that's really admirable. And, you know, one other thing that I think is interesting about what you said, and something I work with my students is too many artists that I see that they think they know their style, then they just like rest in it. And I think it's like, you know, such an important thing as an artist. And I feel like this, and as an artist myself, get too comfortable with your style and then you stop making stuff that like really resonates with people, because it's just like, you know, it becomes too mundane. And I appreciate that about like you. It feels like you're really just like exploring your potential in a way that's like very refreshing. It feels like so many artists are just trying to be a thing, and for you it's like, I don't know, it just feels different. It feels very exciting, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, man.
Bryan, are you still feeling like you've got a bit of a connection here? Is your
Yes, as
sounds
long
like-
as can you hear me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I wanted to just like get back where we've been talking about style here with our other 2 guests, and I'd be interested just to hear about like your curation, especially from the like e-commerce side of the work that you do on Culture Square. Like, how is it that you're like sort of like curating these collections or finding vendors or finding individuals to work with? What's the process, and what are you trying to create out of that?
Correct. And I hope that the other two guests not gonna kind of perceive this as a pitch.
You
As a pitch for them. But actually, what they're doing is actually very great and very appealing to me. So that was actually the philosophy that I embraced when I started the platform. When I was traveling to these places in the world, I found out that there were amazing artists, amazing people that could, they were creating amazing things, but they were not known in the world. So my concept was like, I know how to code. I understand finance and all that stuff, which is something that is more appealing to artists. And I was like, no, I think I should create a platform that should showcase them to the world. That way they can actually diversify their product. Because what I was trying to notice was that there was this guy who was a tailor or a fashion designer in South Africa. He had a brand called Urban Zulu. And there were this artist in Tanzania that was creating amazing painting of Maasai people. And they were selling these things locally. No one knew about this product. So I was like, you know, you here doing amazing thing and actually making a living by selling these things locally. What if I provide you a platform where you can actually be selling passively, of course, your art, actually your design, and be able to actually make a living and receiving foreign currency, like foreign income through them. So this was amazing how the response came, and in few weeks after, they were able to register and be able to actually hop on our e-commerce. So what I wanted to say is that the most important need for an artist is to be recognized, to showcase his work and stuff like that. And you'll see most of these people striving hard in their communities to be recognized. And my platform, I think, plays that big role of trying to lend them a hand so that they are kind of recognized on a world scale. So that is not just to be recognized somewhere in Erie, somewhere in Tanzania, but to be known actually on the global. We're living in an era of globalization. So this is the moment where you shouldn't stay too much local, which is good. I'm not saying that staying local is bad, but to be local and shining a little bit globally, I would say.
Thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate it. So we're sort of like getting close to time. We've got about 10 minutes left if I'm judging correctly here. Kathy, does that seem about right to
That
you?
is correct. You would have
so-
got a 10-minute warning in a couple minutes.
Okay, all right, I'm right with it then. So I thought we'd just give everybody, like, I'm really curious about like what's next for your brands. And Antonio, I don't know if you consider yourself a brand, but I guess we'll use that label right here, you know, as an artist. But what's next for your organizations and for what you're doing? And then we'll open it up and see if there's any questions from other folks. I'll keep my eye over here, but for these last 10 minutes, I thought I'd just leave the floor open so you can talk about aspirations, goals, thoughts for that next chapter.
So my next chapter includes evolving the community mural making into an apprenticeship for people returning from prison. as a way to reintroduce them to the community in meaningful ways, right? Mural making. And give them a paid stipend for that and inspire them to do something differently, exploring art, and showing that they can make a living off of just painting and involving the community in things and growing with the community instead of retreating to our respective silos and concentrating exclusively on reentry as a compartmentalized aspect of our lives. So yeah, that's where I'm going with it.
Davina, what about you?
For me, what's next is just continuing to grow my clientele as a confidence coach. I'm learning more and more that confidence coaching is not something a lot of people know about, but it is definitely needed. So, you know, just continuing to put my name out there and, you know, get people to come on over and be able to help and encourage them and lift them up. Events, look out, because 2023 is going to look real divinely crowned. I've already said it. So definitely more events for our community, just to bring people together in a positive way. Growing this podcast I have, and doing more speaking engagements. And then my ultimate goal is to have my own facility for self-love and self-care, which would be like the actual hub for people to come and do a bunch of things to take care of themselves. So that's in the work. I'm like claiming that for like 2024. So I told my business coach, I'm like, put it in the business plan. So just to continue to inspire people to really embrace loving up on themselves, because I believe, I'm always saying, like, the more you love yourself, truly, genuinely, the more you're able to pour out to the world, pour out to the people in your life, in your community, things like that. So just continue to be the light that I am through this brand.
So what does that space actually look like? I'm really curious about that. Like, is it like almost like a subscription based like kind of club where you go and hang out with like-minded individuals, or
Something like that. I will say it would give like the spa vibes, cafe vibes, combined with a bunch of other stuff. So I don't want to tell too much. You just gotta
No, that's fine.
But yes, it definitely would be like a whole self-care facility. But yeah, without like the spa, but it would give that vibe for sure.
I love it. That's fantastic. Bryan, what's the plan for you?
Yeah, we currently working on creating apps because the vision that we have is just a desktop version. So we looking at maybe releasing this app by early next year, and we also working hard on having our own show where we actually would like to be just kind of sponsoring cultural connection between people. So this is something that will be in the realm of just organizing. If somebody would like to connect with a specific nationality or community, they can come through Culture Square and be able to easily do it. And access whatever they want to access, be it food, be it language, or be it a specific product that they want to kind of access. So this is something we're working very hard, and we hope that we will reach these goals by early next year.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. I've got just a couple very brief questions then that I just wanted to ask. Antonio, I was just like kind of pondering here something that you said, and I'm really interested. Obviously, like, you have a vested interest in working with formerly incarcerated people, but what is it that, like, you notice? What is it inspires much change? As I'm kind of like hopeful that it does with formerly incarcerated people once they start doing the kind of placemaking that you facilitate as a muralist?
I think so. I think the impacts that murals have on the community, once you experience that, to be able to affect an environment in a positive way that people appreciate it for decades to come, right? And as someone coming from prison, always being told that we are incapable of creating anything positive and meaningful, right? To be able to come back and do something like that is truly restorative. And I think in the criminal legal system right now, what's missing is that restorative component, right? Offering pathways back to a community that we never knew before, and relationships that we have to be beholden to and appreciate and respect in ways that we hadn't before, right? And hold ourselves accountable. I think that's a component that's missing, and something that a person like myself who comes from that environment can not only bring to the fore, but also exemplify the results, right?
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. I think I could just talk to you about art forever, I think, but I should probably leave it alone at some point. But yeah, it's but I do think, it's a question that you kind of always get as an artist, or somebody who wants to be an aspiring artist, like, oh, what are you going to do with that? And I always just like lean into the comment, well, what we do is make culture. Like what higher cause can there be? And especially for people that are on the periphery, when you can come back in and make culture, that's pretty noble and pretty powerful. And I think it's really fascinating speaking to all three of you, working with different communities that oftentimes would be considered, underrepresented or marginalized, and like the power with the work, the power and influence that comes from the work that all of you are doing, and the like transformation that is obviously happening and palpable is incredibly powerful and very inspiring to see. And it's one of the reasons why I feel lucky to live in Northwest PA these days. That's for sure. It's remarkable stuff. So, well, with that, Kathy, how do you feel? I think we're within 30 seconds of our time, so I just didn't want to,
Yeah, so I just want to thank all three of you for Antonia and Davina for actually braving the snow and coming in. Bryan, safe travels back. But oh my gosh, it was such a pleasure to hear your stories and hear what's next for you all. It's super exciting. In fact, Bryan and Davina, I met, well, I know this young lady named Gabby Riaz, and we were talking at the Griswold Fair, where it was super warm a couple weeks ago, and she had this awesome idea, and we're going to make it happen on December 17th in my building. We're doing a minority craft fair. So spread the word. We'd like to have 20 tables and just a nice warm place, but to showcase. So Bryan, if you have anybody, in your space that that would love to come and, be made aware with their wares, we would love to have them. I believe I am having it for free because they're all startups. And what happens in my building stays in this building. But anyway, would love to, to have anyone reach out to me if you have anybody, would love to have them come for the fair. But again, it's such a pleasure to get to know each of you. Antonio's receiving Beehive services, and you guys are just all so special in your own right. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and thank you to everyone who participated in Global Entrepreneurship Week 2022. And we just appreciate all of the startups in our community. We're very lucky to have you to participate in the economic development of the Erie area, and it's just a pleasure. So Byron, thank you so much for moderating. You did a fantastic job.
Very welcome. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You did the hard part.
Yeah, everybody be safe.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Bryan, I'm reaching out to you, man. Yeah.
Appreciate. Nice meeting you.
Yes,
well.
I'm sorry that I was not at the beginning of the thing.
No, you are totally fine.
I would like both of you, because I don't know, to get on culturesquare.com, contact me, or contact us. It's gonna come straight to me, and we can arrange a meeting, the three of us, just to sit around. Yeah.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Bye.